Good evening, everybody. It's my pleasure and honor to welcome all of you today to this evening's program of the CII Forum as well as the GE 2.3 megawatts product launch. We are really grateful to you for taking time, investing your efforts today, this evening, and for your support and participation at this program. As we start this program, I would just like to take a moment and invite our leaders for the ceremonial lamp lighting. If I can please invite Ms. Varsha Joshi, please, Mr. K.S. Popley, Mr. Gomati Nayagam, Mr. Jerome Picres, Ms. Anne McKinty, Mr. Banmali Agrawala, and Ms. Michaela Bulik for the lamp lighting, please. Thank you so much. Thanks to our leaders as we start on this auspicious note. If I may take 1 second, we have two main events this evening. First 1 hour would be a CII panel. Mr. Banmali Agrawala will be leading and moderating the panel with our dignitaries here. And then in the second 1 hour, we would have the 2.3 megawatt wind turbine product launch, as well as the digital wind farm launch. So please stay with us, and I'm sure you will have an exciting journey as we unveil some of the new offerings as well as some of the thoughts that you will hear at the panel. With that, if I may invite Mr. Banmali Agrawala to lead the panel, please.
So thank you so much, Mahesh, for that. And on behalf of CII and of GE, I invite all of you and thank all of you for having coming here. We are indeed grateful to you, and Soma from CII, I don't know, I can see you somewhere in the audience. Where are you? You're there. Soma, thank you so much for putting all this together. We're really indeed grateful to you. So I think we have a very distinguished set of people with us with whom we are going to have a discussion. So I'd like to start by first inviting Ms. Varsha Joshi on stage. Ma'am, if you could please come up. I think all of us who are in the renewable space understand she's a joint secretary in MNRE. I think she's, right here, she's done a lot of phenomenal work. She's, of course, a member of the IAS, and we all know her very well. May I also invite Mr. K.S. Popley, the chairman of IRIDA. Once again, Mr. Popley has been associated with financing projects, long experience also in PFC and now with renewables. I think Mr. Popley will kindly be here. Dr. Gomati Nayagam, thank you so much for joining us. The very fact that you have a doctor that precedes your name tells everything about you. Maybe have you over here. As we all know, Dr. Gomati Nayagam has been leading CWET, which is now with a different name, but essentially the purpose is the same, and really a stalwart in the entire industry. So thank you so much for joining us. And of course, Mr. Jerome Picres. Jerome is the global renewables leader for GE. He handles all of GE's renewable portfolio, which, as some of you might know, is now a tier 1 business for GE. It's about a $10 billion business, and Jerome leads all of that for global GE. We have many other global GE leaders here in the audience, and I'm sure you'll get an opportunity to interact with them. What I'd wanted to do, maybe during the course of the next 40, 45 minutes, is essentially just have a conversation with the people here, and would spend about the last 10 or 15 minutes for a few questions, that might be from the audience. So please do get prepared to ask any questions that you might have. And if I may begin, Jerome, by asking you, I know you've just come in not too long ago, maybe a little jet lag, so your answers, I'm sure, will be fresh. But Jerome, from a global perspective, and I think with the oil prices and all of that, the way they are so low, how do you see renewables? Do you see any letdown, or do you still see a massive thrust for it on a global basis?
I think, on a global scale, and everywhere I travel, I was in China and Japan last week. We see no signs of slowdown for renewable growth. I think there are obviously issues about global growth. There are issues about oil prices. We don't see any impact today of that on the pace at which renewable is growing, and on the pace at which the energy transition from thermal to renewable is happening. I think since 2014, every year in the world, on the total number of new gigawatts of energy production installed, more than half is renewable. And I think this will continue, and this percentage is likely to increase. I think it's predicated on a number of factors. The first one is a drive towards more and more CO2-free energy, and that's going to be amplified post-COP21. And the second thing, which should not be underestimated, is all the efforts that have been done by equipment suppliers, by our customers everywhere in the world to drive down the cost of renewable energy. Everywhere in the world now, solar, utility-scale solar, wind, is competitive with thermal sources. So with the scale of the renewable industry today, the cost of wind energy, I think, has come down 60% in the US. We see projects happening in North Africa, in Brazil, around 40 to 50 euro per megawatt hour. So at this level of price, I would say the cost of the oil barrel is no longer a factor on renewable, I think. So I'm very confident that we'll see that growth happening and continuing to happen, provided that we continue to have a stable regulatory regime, and provided we continue to have financing sources for renewable projects. So I have absolutely no fears. As you know, Banmali, I was part of Alstom Energy Business, and I've joined GE with the Alstom acquisition on November 2nd. There is one big similarity between Alstom and GE, is that every year we do 5-year marketing projections on our energy markets. And I think at Alstom, what I always saw is every year we are looking backwards about how our energy projections were accurate or not. And every year we concluded that we are underestimating the speed of growth for renewable. And now that I'm part of GE, I can see exactly the same thing. We do marketing projection at GE, and every year we also underestimate the speed of renewable growth. So in summary, I'm very confident about the perspectives of these markets globally, and in particular here in India. I spent part of the days with some of our wind customers, and you can see a lot of energy, a lot of momentum for wind in India, a lot of financing available for wind projects in India, and that leads me to be even more optimistic for India than for, I would say, the global world as far as renewable is concerned.
Great. Thanks, Jerome. And if I could just ask you as a follow-up, so what are some of the new trends in technology that you're seeing on a global basis now that renewables is getting more popular, more acceptable, more affordable? What are some of the newer trends in technology?
I think, talking about wind for 1 second, I think we see a trend toward obviously bigger and more efficient turbine, and that's, by the way, what we are doing here in India by introducing our new turbine for the Indian market. So that one step of the innovation is bigger, more efficient turbine. As far as hydro is concerned, more reactive power plants. You want any source of energy, and that's particularly the case for hydro, to be able to send power to the market, to the grid in less than 1 second. So that's the first trend, and I think that trend will continue. When you look at it, we have been innovating in thermal power for 100 years. We have been starting to innovate in renewable for only 10 years. So I think we are only at the beginning of innovation, I think. Then the next 2 frontiers of innovation for renewable, to me, are one, storage. Storage is going to be obviously important. When you get to massive level of renewable getting into the grid, you need to find a way to store that energy, either with specific storage solution or with hydro. And the second new frontier for renewable is digital. I think there is a big things have to happen in digital to help us, continuing to improve the operation of the farms, both the production, the maintenance, the ability to forecast energy, and by improving the production of these farms, continuing to bring down the cost of renewable energy. So I think, again, I would say there will be a lot of continuous innovation on technologies, bigger, more efficient turbine, and two big disruptions ahead of us. One is storage, and the second is digital.
Thank you, Jerome. Ms. Joshi, if I may turn to you, I think as a country, we have this, I think we've done substantially well over the years as a country. I think we've got a fair amount of a generation that comes from clean sources, and we've got some very rather ambitious targets of getting to 175 gigawatt on renewables. In your opinion, ma'am, what do you think now is the next phase of development or that needs to be done from a policy standpoint to make sure that we move from, let's say, 40 gigawatt to 175 gigawatt in the time frame, in the fairly short time frame that we have planned? If you could please share some thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think one important thing is how you bring down the costs. That is perhaps the single, and in solar it has been reasonably easy to do it because there was a format in which tendering became possible and the investments were protected through the mechanisms of payment security, of using a counterparty risk avoiding mechanism and so on. Wind has been more of a self-starter because wind has been dominated by private investment, and it started with mainly open access and captive, and that was the market, and then slowly it has moved into purchase by the government. But now I think we are, as far as wind is concerned, we are at a certain stage, and then we need to make a quantum jump. Because the policy environment is going to be different now, the way that wind will grow is going to be different now. Though I'm really happy to inform that, as Mr. Lecrosse said, the targets have been overshot everywhere, and we are overshooting the target in wind also this year for India, because we started with a very modest target of 2,400, and we're going to touch, if all goes well, 3,200. So I'm really happy about that. But the fact remains that wind has grown till now because the states were buying it, or the private sector, the industry was buying it. The windy states are not likely to be buying huge quantities of wind very easily in the future, at least not in the near future, till the way of stabilizing and balancing it is much more sophisticated. At this stage, I would expect that the main growth is going to come, and this is true even for solar, it's not just wind, it's going to come through interstate sales. So interstate is a whole new policy environment. 2 or 3 very important things have already happened in it. The tariff policy has waived off the interstate charges for transmission in wind. That is likely to be notified by the regulators soon. So once that happens, I believe there's a lot of wind which is ready to be sold once that happens. So that is going to be one of the main drivers now. The second thing in the tariff policy is, of course, now the mandating of the RPO, which was not there earlier. So now we are very clear, we have it in black and white, that the RPO has to be going up to 15% or 17% by 2022, and 8% of that is solar, the rest is non-solar. So that's where all that wind is going to be purchased. It's going to be the non-windy states fulfilling their RPOs by buying wind, which is going to be set up in the windy states. So to help the windy states actually set up more power, there's not too much one can do at this stage to increase the absorption within those states. The one thing that we have been able to do, and I think a lot of credit goes to Dr. Gomti Nayakan and Nive for having kickstarted it in Tamil Nadu. There was a lot of confusion and mess regarding scheduling and forecasting when I joined. That was in October 2014. So, I mean, the states were blaming the industry was blaming the states, and nobody was actually doing it. So with a little bit of initiative taken in Tamil Nadu, thanks to Nive and the forecasting model that they started, today the national level, the interstate forecasting is in place. Most of the states are going to bring finalize their own forecasting mechanisms very soon. Industry is ready to do it. The states are well on their way to create their renewable management centers, and they have all undergone some training in forecasting and scheduling. So that is something which is going to make a lot of difference in the comfort level of the state for absorbing the wind that is already there. But even now, I would say for a couple of years now, their chances of their absorbing very large volumes of wind themselves is on the low side. So right now, we will need to push more for selling interstate. And selling interstate will, of course, need clear-cut regulations and clear-cut knowledge of availability of transmission. So I think that's a bit of a challenge which we now, I think we'll learn as we go, because the transmission is there. It's not that it's, but there are congestion points. And there are a lot of things we don't know. Like in solar last year, we had this huge learning experience about how do you apply for the LTA, and it turned out that the whole mechanism had to be amended to allow it to happen. Because a lot of things are like that, especially in renewable. You learn as you go. Because everything's different. Transmission in renewables is different from normal transmission. Scheduling in renewables is different from normal scheduling. So you have to keep learning and keep moving. So I think learning how to figure out transmission to everybody's satisfaction and seeing if any regulatory or any technical provisions from the government side need to be changed. That's going to be a process I think we all ought to be concentrating on in the next 1 year.
I think that was, I think you made a few very crucial points about interstate sale. I think that was crucial. Some day-ahead forecasting in terms of predictability. If I could just take a point from what Jerome mentioned about the digital piece, so that especially you can manage the system, have better output. Would you have any thoughts, ma'am, in terms of how do you encourage or, in a sense, incentivize more predictability, better outcomes from existing installations or even future installations? Would you have any thoughts in terms of, from a policy framework, what could be done to encourage more mainstreaming of renewables?
That was the main purpose of the forecasting and scheduling mechanism, of making sure that there is a certain discipline and that everyone tries to give the quality of power that they are saying they are going to give. But power quality is a slightly not fully developed concept yet in India, because we've been talking so much and we've been pushing so much just for power availability. Even today, we still haven't got to 24/7 power for all. It's still a scheme which is at the moment in full swing. So quality is something that we now need to take up at a higher scale. And again, here I will point out that the capacity to pay or the capacity to raise tariffs beyond a certain point is just not there. It's not going to happen. And it's certainly not going to be easy to push that in the wake of the kind of tariffs we have got for solar. So we will have to keep in mind that any improvements that we try to make should be something that the industry should be able to, afford. The industry should be able to actually make use of that improvement and improve its own bottom lines without necessarily hoping for new tariffs or new incentives. Those days are just fading away now.
Thank you so much, Ms. Joshi. If I may ask Mr. Popley, I think capital or financing is absolutely raw material for renewables. From your perspective, in terms of quantum of funds and more importantly, the cost of capital, what do you think would be different from what we've been doing so far in order to meet this target of 175 gigawatt, and where do you think we stand as a country?
Well, to meet 1,75,000 megawatt, definitely banks will not have sufficient funds. What we require is a strong bond market here. And also, we are talking about green bonds, offshore bonds. That is to mature. Then we were also talking about creating a pool of projects together, taking it out from the bank, take out financing through project route. Now, these are the few things, if the bond market matures, domestic bond market, yes, a lot of funds are going to come. A lot of funds are there from Green Climate Fund also. Today they have $10 billion, but those funds are bound to increase. So definitely, and also, more importantly, the financial institutions will be shifting their funding from conventional to non-conventional energy. So that is the way forward. And last 5 years, of course, the cost of funds has come down. That is market-driven, of course, but the cost has come down. And if you have a mature bond market, definitely the cost of funds will further come down. So you have seen some 10 to 15% downside on cost in the last 3 to 4 years. The cost will further come down. So we are somewhere around 10 to 11.5% today. Maybe, the RBI also reduces rates, maybe 0.25% further. that is the way out.
And Mr. Popli, I mean, we've seen some of, let's say, the projects that have now come on stream, particularly on the solar side, where tariff bidding has been quite aggressive, and many of them perhaps have been based on some fairly low-cost capital that's coming in from the outside into the country. And we know that there is some fairly low-cost capital that's available. Is it possible for IRIDA to channelize some of that low-cost capital to make its way into projects so that it kind of escapes the, how should I say, the Indian cost of capital, or local cost of capital? What could be done in an innovative way, and especially given IRIDA, the size, the volume, you know, the spread that you have of projects, could there be something innovative that could be done to bring down the cost of capital?
It's a little tough, but see, you can think of hedging only for the equity portion. Your domestic cost need not be, because they need return in foreign currency. Suppose the equity is in foreign currency, maybe you only hedge that portion. That is one option. The other is you will need to have some innovative thing on hedging. If you can create a, we had been discussing that if you create a fund and sinking fund and then you work on it, your average inflation, I mean, rise is 3.5% to 4%. So at present, we are hedging at 6.5% to 7%. So something on those lines can be thought of. Maybe there is a downside for 1% to 2%.
Okay. Mr. Gomti Vinayagam, I mean, you've been watching new technologies come in now for many, many years. And over this time period, from your experience, what is the change that you have seen in terms of the newer technologies that you're seeing? Fundamentally, have you seen a fundamental shift, or are they just incremental changes that you see?
Yeah, in terms of new technologies, I see a fundamental shift even in the investor's behavior in choice of the machines. Even the AD customer, accelerated depreciation customer, is now looking for more energy, annual energy, rather than just investing in 4 or 5 machines. So it amounts to say that large capacity machines are required, and we have graduated into that. Multi-megawatt machines are available in India, and I'm very happy that now GE is launching the largest diameter, 116-meter diameter rotor in India with a larger hub height. And these are going to definitely take the wind much more faster in the world. I'm just returning last week from the Berlin Energy Wende, and there is a lot of push for the wind sector. Everyone was talking about more than 50–60% is from the wind all over the renewable energy sector. And renewable energy also now is taking new shapes, like they are including heating, cooling as the cross-sector possibilities, and also mobile, digital mobility and so on. These are all coming into energy transition in a big way. I think wind is going to be a winner all the time, being a mature technology. And in a couple of forums I have seen, wind is being accepted as a very mature technology, and is being talked as in India as an orderly development that is taking place. Even though competitive bidding has not taken place in this area, there is enough competition from 51 models and 21 companies marketing wind machines in India. We are number 2 in manufacturing in the world, and we have capacity to manufacture 9,000 megawatts in a year, but we take hardly 3,200 megawatts domestic utilization. So I think wind has got a long way to go, and this we have been very successful in providing 106 substations in Tamil Nadu. I think Madam Ashra Joshi was instrumental in having breakfast meetings and lunch meetings to make that wind generators of Tamil Nadu who are going to the court to pay for the wind forecasting and scheduling. And this has happened as a miracle, and we have reduced the error levels to 10% from 10% to 2 to 6%, even in a low wind season. So with this, I think last Governing Council, Secretary was very appreciative, and he said we will be doing, in any case, for the government sector, the forecasting for the wind as well as solar for the entire India. This was I think with these inputs and big push, big push from the government, and so much of incentives and raw materials being given customs duty exemption and so on, I think with Make in India efforts being strictly adhered to by GE and such big companies, I think it's going to go in a big way in India. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And if I could just kind of ask a follow-up question on that, and again, about the predictability, the whole digital dimension, et cetera, from your perspective when you're evaluating and certifying newer technologies, how do you factor that dimension in to your evaluation of new technologies?
There is no straight answer for this question, but however, I can say that except the mobile phones and laptops, no engineering material has come down in cost. In spite of that, we have been seeing a declining unit cost of energy from wind, ever so on. In spite of ever increasing cost of engineering materials, you say cement, concrete, steel, composites, resins, everything. But in spite of that, we are able to bring down the cost. It's only because of technology and technology innovations. And the prediction by GWEC is that another 30% reduction in unit cost of wind energy is going to happen in the next decade. And that's going to happen only with innovations. That's what is my prediction.
So I think you've already given everyone a target, and I think you've put all manufacturers on notice out here, and there are many of them sitting in the room. I'm just going to ask a few more questions, and then I will seek some questions from the audience, so please do get prepared. Ms. Joshi, you know, we speak about, when we talk about renewables, it's solar, wind. What about hydro? How are we going to revive hydro?
Well, that's one headache which is not mine, because it's the Ministry of Power's headache, but it is our headache also, because hydro is needed for balancing anyway, and it's a clean technology, and it's a great way of making the power, and pumped hydro is going to be, maybe not in the next 3 or 4 or 5 years, but in the long run, definitely pumped hydro is going to be a huge factor when it comes to storage and balancing, even in India. So from whatever I've understood of the sector, it's a set of circumstances which have really brought hydro to where it is. It's not the fundamentals. There's nothing wrong with the fundamentals of it. So I hope the MOP does something about it. As far as pumped hydro is concerned, I have been, in my own way, trying my best to encourage some kind of scheme from the MOP to push it, and maybe get some concessional funding line for pumped hydro, and I don't know, maybe you'd like to be interested in that, because it's very important.
Come to Mr. Popley for some concessional financing questions, but Jerome, you had a point to make. Yes, of course.
I fully agree. I mean, as far as GE is concerned, as you know, with Alstom acquisition, GE went back into the hydro world, and Alstom and now GE has been in India for 30, 40 years as a big player in the hydro business. And with the growth of intermittent source of renewable energy, so solar and wind, hydro has to be in the medium term part of the balancing mechanism. I mean, that's the way it works in many places of the world, including in Europe, by the way. In Europe, nobody has been building for a long time new hydro operations to produce power. But for example, Switzerland is still building new pump storage capacity just to accommodate the increased part of renewable in the mix in Europe. So India is blessed with great sun resource, I mean great wind resource, but also abundant water resource, and over time these resources have to be used to balance the system. All the more that the pump storage technology that you refer to has improved a lot over the years, and it's now much more reactive and can allow to do effective, balancing with less than 1 second reaction time. So I think it has to be, and there are a number of hydro projects happening in India. There are a number of hydro projects, unfortunately, being blocked, and I think we are still hopeful that the ones which are blocked with rhythm and that pump storage will develop in the years to come. I agree with you, it's probably not going to be next year, but if we take a 5 to 10 year view, it has to be part of the system, which will also mean adapting the grid to make sure that this pump storage in the states where they are can be connected to the source of renewable production.
And Mr. Popley, money again, when you are evaluating projects, especially with a view to lend to those projects, and from a technology perspective, is there a difference with, again, the point that Jerome made about being digital or the kind of technology, does that also play a role in your cost of financing to a particular project? Or is it entirely driven by what's the tariff, this is the cash flow, and therefore it's a standard rate of financing? Can you differentiate in the cost of financing based on the kind of technology that's going into a project?
So far, we are not taking that into account. But in case technology helps in giving better generation, more availability, yes, definitely that can be taken into consideration. But so far, I mean, it's a conventional way of working and evaluating projects.
Yeah. And again, I mean, the rate at which technology is changing, from a financing perspective, again, would you be willing to accept newer ideas and thoughts, even though they may not have precedence of, many thousand hours
Yes,
of operation and things like that?
that should not be an issue, but see, once the regulation comes in place, and then technology plays an important role in meeting those regulations, that will have to be factored in by the financiers.
Right. So I'm going to see if there are any questions from the audience at this stage. I don't know if you can have the lights on, and anyone on any of the items that we've discussed, but even otherwise. I mean, we've got policy, we've got money, we've got technology, and we've got a global perspective. I mean, what more can you ask for? So is there anyone who might have?
If I may ask a question?
Yes, if you could
Here.
please.
This is Nitin Bhate from GE.
Yeah, Nitin.
Question for Secretary Joshi. India has always led in terms of policies for renewables, and MNRE has played a big role. When you look at the install base and look at repowering or look at wind solar hybrid, are you thinking of creating any policies or instituting any policies so that we can get to the 175 gigawatt target that Banmali was mentioning?
Yeah, repowering, I hope most of the audience has seen at least the draft policy that we came out with. It's almost final now. We should be out with it in a couple of weeks. We just need some final approvals. So we already have the repowering policy in place, more or less. And the great thing is that all the states are on board. We made sure that they'll be on board before we are going to announce it. So, in fact, that is the third component that I was talking about. You have the interstate buyer, you have the interstate transmission, and you have the cheaper wind that you're going to get in a place like Tamil Nadu or Karnataka, where the old windmill started off. That's the best wind in the country. And I'm certainly hoping that the repowering policy will kickstart it. And Mr. Popley is helping us with it too, because he's giving some concessional finance in it. The other part is the wind-solar hybrid. I mean, we'll be too happy to look at wind-solar hybrid in a bigger way. And there's nothing today which prevents solar and wind side-by-side hybrid from happening. As long as there are separate meters and the shadow is not falling on the solar, there is nothing which stops it from happening. As a policy, I have been struggling a little bit because I do want to come out with a wind-solar hybrid policy, but then because the mechanisms for wind and solar pricing are very different in India, I don't know where, there's a whole consultation happening there. I don't know exactly where on the spectrum that's going to fall. But on the other side, on the technological side, I believe almost all wind companies have been looking at hybridizing either externally or internally. And that, while it'll be wonderful in a technological point of view, I think getting the tariffs right in the case of, behind the inverter kind of hybridization, getting the tariffs right may take longer. The technology will need to stabilize, we'll need pilots, we'll need to look at data from several companies, and only then will the tariffs really be regulated.
I agree. I think wind solar is a very exciting concept. In theory, we have to see how it works. So as far as GE is concerned, we'll install in a few weeks the first pilot, and I think there is a bit of return of experience needed to see practical operation of that before the system can be adapted if it did prove to be scalable and to bring the benefits that we expect it to provide.
Dr. Gopinath, from your perspective to the question that was asked about repowering, from a technology or technical perspective, any thoughts that you might have on, is it a good idea, bad idea? What needs to be the care taken from a technology perspective?
Repowering is definitely a very good idea. I think only thing is the land cost has appreciated in a big way in most of the old wind farms. And that should be a motivation for the old investors to come forward to offer the old wind farms to make a society, because many are single windmill owners. That should be, the policy also should include how to make a society to come forward and take up a larger technology. And the best wind sites are occupied by more than 3,000, 6,000 small windmills. Right. So definitely a repowering policy which includes how to make them come together will definitely help in a big way to have more energy from the same area.
Right. I think that's a very crucial point about small ownership and yes, I think that's very crucial. Any other questions that we would have from the audience? Yeah, give me, yes, sure, Nilesh, go ahead. And then microphone there. Yeah, go ahead, Nilesh.
Good evening. This is a question to Dr. Gamathanagam. My name is Milesh Gogar. I work with GE. We are seeing a lot of adoption of sensors and digital technologies now in wind power, in solar power, even in hydropower, which has always been there. Do you think from a certification standpoint as well, you need to now have newer norms, especially around data security and data integration, especially as more and more digital technologies get integrated with wind turbines?
I think it is very much essential. If you see the R&D spending in India, I think I have only the statistics in India, about 604 crores have been spent in the first 11th and 12th plan, of which most of the 92% is taken by solar thermal and solar photovoltaic, and 15% from hydrogen energy, but 0.1% is taken by the wind providers, which means you are doing all the R&D closed doors for remaining competitive, and every extra information you have is a business for you. So, so data security is a must, because they have to protect. They might be having a consortium to reduce the cost of offshore wind turbines. That's a consortium of competitive companies have joined together in Europe to reduce the cost of offshore wind energy. But that is possible, but when it comes to bidding for a project, I think you would like to have your secrets with you. I think. Thank you.
So that's the second message today. One was about the cost. I hope you've got the messages. And the second is about don't be so secretive. We hear you loud and clear. I think there was a question. Please, go ahead.
Good evening. I am Dinesh Jagdale and I represent the IPP Panama Wind Energy. Ma'am, my question is that while the industry is still gearing up to comply with the scheduling and forecasting regulations, what we have come across is that while the regulations are still in the draft stage in most of the states, but we still find that every state is also coming with their own version of regulations. And while the industry is trying to gear up and try to formulate their algorithms, is it possible that across the country we will have one regulation so that it is more effectively implemented by all the operators like us? Thank you.
Fantastic question. Yes.
It's a federal country. Well, of course, we started with the national one, and then the CRC came up with the draft, which was discussed repeatedly in the FOR. I have attended many of the meetings of the FOR. So I think this is a negotiation process which will go on. From whatever I can see, it will happen now over this next 1 year. I think this ping pong will happen. The states certainly are well within their rights to do whatever they feel like. On the other hand, you may be aware that the CRC has constituted a technical committee, which is headed by the technical member of the CRC and has the technical member of each state regulator as part of it. So that's the door that one has to knock here. So I would, CRC has been operating in an extremely transparent and inclusive manner. They have At every stage they do consultations, at every stage they have draft publications, at every stage they allow a lot of advocacy to happen. So I would request the industry to keep doing that, keep going back to the state regulators, explaining your problems, don't let up the pressure where you see that the problems are there. And we of course in the MNRE are always there to assist in whatever way we can.
But I think if I may just kind of follow up on what Ms. Jagdale asked, I think the point about having a uniform regulatory environment or maybe uniform, let's say, rules, and we spoke about predictability and so on, I think it's really crucial. And we do get a point about being a federal structure. So how would we, I mean, is it just through cajoling, coaxing that this is going to happen, or?
It's data.
Sorry?
Data.
Data.
I think everyone has to make sure that they get their data right and that they present it correctly to the regulator.
Right, okay. We just have time for one more question. Yep, I see a hand behind over there. Or two more, okay. Yes, Mr. Raju, please go ahead.
Yeah, this is Sundaraju from Atria Power. Question is to Mr. Joshi and Mr. Popley. One of the challenges that you've pointed out to get to this 175 gigawatts is the money issue. And we certainly have to go out of the country to look at raising money. We continuously hear thoughts that are going on about how we can, protect the downside risks of currency. Can we actually say, let's start looking at a direction and say, set a deadline for the government underwriting the risks of currency in some fashion? Because each time we go out, the costs are different depending on who goes out. I mean, to me, it may be 7%, to someone else it's 6%, and so on. And I see no reason why there should be differentiation, because at the end of the day, the country is paying for it. So is there some way we can actually drive this directionally, centrally, with the MNRE taking lead and most probably nominating Mr. Popley and his organization as the frontal organization to drive this?
Have dollar-denominated tariffs. I think that's what Mr. Raju is saying. Have I translated?
In some one fashion, or the dollar-denominated tariff, or saying the underwriting the currency risk for loans, if you will. I mean, it could be various models, but
This
Just
is,
say yes.
No, this is not easy, I think. It's not easy. I mean, do you have any examples globally where it has been done? I don't think so.
Let's put it this way. We'd love the world community to come in. No, 175 gigawatts is something that is, it's not just India which is going to benefit, right? That's a target which is going to benefit the whole world, because the whole world gets cleaner. This is precisely where we are hoping for all that so-called climate finance and concessional finance, and I mean, that's what the COP was for, we would imagine. So
ma'am,
we're certainly hoping for that.
Every time we talk to financial institutions outside, they talk of a reduction in the basis points if that risk of currency is not there. So finally, I have to either underwrite the risk as an individual organization, or the country has to underwrite. I think you're in a better equipped to underwrite it than any individual organization or company.
I'll just, I mean, it's not, oh.
Sure, please. So I do not need to introduce Secretary MNRE on the dais. Thank you so much, and please.
I just came to respond to that question because I found Popley was hesitating, maybe because I was present there. The dollar tariff project is not through because when actually we were about to go ahead, we found the dollar-rupee equivalence going up. But we have done 2-3 things. One thing is that recently we took $500 million from World Bank. We have given it to State Bank of India. We have told State Bank of India, please keep the money in London and utilize it for your own purpose. And back home in India, you can give a loan with a reduced rate of interest, which means the hedging is natural. To that extent, some sort of reduction of interest rate will come. It will go to the aggregators in the rooftop area. We are trying the same thing with $500 million from ADB it is going to the Punjab National Bank. But then underwriting at a national level is not possible. It cannot be done. But we have formed an International Solar Alliance, if you must have read about it. Now what ISA has done, they are in touch with the New Development Bank in Shanghai, which Mr. Kamath has taken charge. Then they are also in touch with AIBB, AIIB, and the World Bank. Now three things they're asking. One, at present World Bank gives around 5% of their credit exposure to the renewable sector. So they are in touch with World Bank and they're requesting at least this flow of credit from the World Bank should not be less than 15%. Well, World Bank, it takes time and they will consider it, they have told. The New Development Bank, the BRIC Bank, has agreed that they will put a roadmap of how much money they will be pumping to the renewable energy sector. And that shall not be less than 15%. We are in touch with AIB also. Now, if you have more flow of capital into this sector, to some extent the hedging will come down, but we are also telling them to find out if there is some mechanism where hedging costs can be cross-subsidized. In the sense, if you divide the credit disbursement of World Bank into polluting sector and non-polluting sector, we are essentially telling that you charge something more to the polluting sector, but reduce for the non-polluting, which means the renewable sector. And number three, of course, we are telling that if you can have some fund, some trust fund, somewhere the hedging costs can be minimized. But this is a big problem, and it's a problem for many countries. In fact, the 121 member countries we have in the, prospective member countries in the Solar Alliance, number of countries have this problem, the magic touch of, the foreign currency. When you take and when you return, there is a big difference. But this is just I wanted to inform, if you have any more new ideas, and you think there is some mechanism where this underwriting can be done, either at a national level or international level, we are open to that. In fact, they said Brazil experimented with some idea long back. We have told the US AID to collect these ideas. But my request to you all, if you have any ideas where it can be done, we will be a party to it. We will try together. Thank you.
Thank you so much indeed for intervening. We really appreciate it. Please do have a seat. I must say, we will have, please. I must say, thank you so much for that intervention. I think that was really very informative. We are going to have to close this session. I'm sorry I'm able to cut out that, have to cut out that question, but the panelists are here, so I'll request you to kind of ask it a little later. If I may just request you to be on stage for a minute, and I'd just like to offer you a very small token of our appreciation. And once again, thank you so much for your presence over here. We deeply appreciate it. Sorry, Jerome, I have nothing to say. So, thank you very much indeed. Thank you all so much for joining this session. We're indeed grateful to you. We're just going to now transition into the next session. Please. For sure.